Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Everybody has been talking so much about time, so I'm going to be talking just about time. Um, how do I start? Yeah. Okay, we all know about atheroma and what role it has in acute coronary syndrome, that there's the lipid core and you get a thrombus formation now, whether occlusive or not, depends upon the size of it and how the flow across it happens. This is something we need to know the different types of acute MIs. We tend not to look at them, but there's a type 2 myocardial infarction, which is secondary to ischemic imbalance. Now, you need to keep that in mind during the talk. So the reason for early invasive strategy is that we identify the cause and then we stabilize the plaque and prevent further ischemic episodes. We all know that acute MI is a very devastating event, and we all know that its immediate reperfusion is the established fact, and there's no doubt on that. Similarly, in non-STEMI, we also know that in appropriate patient, it's a well-established mode of treatment that we need to do early preservation. But the real question where there's a gap in the evidence, and that is what is the optimal timing of invasive strategy? That is controversial. And there's some evidence that high-risk patients benefit from early invasive strategy. Now, I was talking to Colonel Azhar, who just got promoted, once again, and Dr. Bilal, and they said कि सर आप एक स्लाइड में बस सारा लेक्चर कर दें. So जिसने एक स्लाइड देखनी है वो बस आखिरी पैरे को देखे. Some evidence that high-risk patients benefit from early invasive strategy. Now that is something to focus on. अगर आप कहते हैं तो मैं आगे भी चलता हूँ, वरना we can like stop here. चले. But the thing is that you must know that there's some data which is going on, and actually this is the only modality or mode of treatment in जिसमें ESC, AHA, and European, and they've all downclassed the evidence from 1A to 2A. And that has been basically because of some recent randomized trial, and even the trial was not evidence enough. The meta-analysis which they did in the discussion, that suggested that there's only a difference in the rate of recurrent ischemia with the randomized trial, and the time is still very controversial. So this gap in evidence concerns the optimal timing of angiography and revascularization. It needs further elaboration. And if you look at all the data, we'll find that data and the real life experience are very different in non-STEMI, and we're going to talk about that also. Some of you may know this guy, and when he was asked about the weapons of mass destruction, he said, we know there are knowns. These are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there is something we do not know. There are also unknowns. The ones we don't know. And that kind of elaborates on the data we have on non-STEMI timing also. So all that, the reason being that all the clinical trials that we've seen and we've done so far, they all vary in their methodology, their results, the timing of the procedure. Some have been as short as 1 hour, some over 24 hours. The enrollment techniques have been very different. And of course, the primary endpoints have also varied in all of them. Look at them that, on the left, the pink shows some by very short, like 1 hour, when some want to 24 hours. The verdict is one trial along with Timax, which have been used very extensively in all the meta-analysis and evidence. And it used very early strategy of 12 hours. But this did not reduce the risk of composite endpoint of acute mortality, non-fatal MIs, admission, heart failure, so forth, except for those with a GRACE score of more than 140. Now that is another, keep this 140 number in mind, because it's going to keep on cropping up. And all the trials, actually, just to summarize, because I have a feeling that we all go away from a lecture with just one lesson. And so that's the lesson that, except for the GRACE score of more than 140, early non-STEMI probably doesn't have that much of a benefit. We'll talk more on this. There was they also did a meta-analysis of 8 randomized control trials, and they all showed no significant mortality reduction. However, the sub-analysis of the high-risk patients was done, and they found that those who had a high risk like diabetes, gray score, more than 140, again that number, higher age, they tend to benefit from early revascularization. TIMAX was another trial. It was a pretty big trial of over 3,000 people. And that, again, in its one-third patients had a score of more than 150 gray score. And they're the people who benefited from early revascularization. And two-thirds had less than 130, 140 score. And they did not show benefit. So when you pull them together, the overall result was not positive. So they thought that this is not a conclusive trial. The sub-analysis showed that there's evidence. So they think it's just a hypothesis-generating trial. It doesn't answer. So there are many other trials, Riddle and the LIPA, and the abroad, and so on and so forth, and ISA-COOL. Let me show this. So all of them have been pooled together in this meta-analysis. And you can see that bulk of the evidence is on the side of early revascularization. And the numbers support that too. But they're not, p-value is not significant. So they can't be used as data also. So all the numbers suggest that early intervention has an advantage, but it didn't really match the p-value. The gray score of 140 subgroup analysis from TIMAC and Verdict, they both pooled together, and they showed that reduction in all-cause mortality associated with the early revascularization in a high baseline risk, again more than 140. And however, these both trials should be taken with some limitations which they had, because when they were being enrolled, they didn't have a very high sensitivity troponin T. They didn't have the potent antiplatelets. They didn't have the guideline-directed medical therapy. So if they were done now, one wonders how useful would they be. So I'm going to rush through some of them now. So rapid STEMI was, non-STEMI was done to clarify this, but unfortunately, it could enroll only 18% of people. And in order to increase that, they included intermediate score people, and they found that the result was again diluted. So one of the conclusions they did was, because I'm rushed to slides because the time's short, that if you want to do a trial which will show early versus late revascularization, you need to enroll at least 70,000 people, which will be so difficult that it's going to be difficult to conduct that trial. So I'm going to rush through some of these trials. We talked about the conclusion of non-STEMI. And so look at the real life scenario. This is like 748,000 people's registry where there was a readmission database. And they found that intervention done on the first day had a mortality of 2.4%, and if done on 10th day, it was 6.6%. So real life data is very different and significantly different than what the data shows. Even the 30-day mortality is very significant. So what's happening is that most patients who come have high risk of more than 140, but the European centers do not have the capacity to deal with all of them. In fact, in England, 96%, 94% who present have high 140 gray score, but only 16% were done early. So you need to restructure this whole system in order to cater for them, and can you really cater for them? So one of the conclusions which I think one needs to draw is that the optimal timing is still uncertain, and there's no difference in hard endpoints. Highest baseline is a predictor of future events. Subgroup analysis of the TIMAC and gray score suggested more than 40 suggests a reduction in composite ischemic outtime, and there's in early intervention, and there's no extra risk to the patient. Now that's a very important thing, that if you do a very early procedure, non-STEMI, there's no risk involved to the patient. So if there's no risk involved to the patient, there is no definitive early time. So what would be the incentive of doing a non-STEMI early in the admission? If you do it early, the real life data suggests that there is a remarkable advantage in mortality. But what happens is that if you do them early, you get an early bed space. I skip the data in interest of time. You can reduce 2.5 to 3 days of admission time by doing early procedure. And that saves money also. So economically, it's very viable. So if the system can afford structurally to do an early procedure, non-STEMI, it's always a good idea to do an early STEMI because it will create beds for you, save money, and in real-life data, registry data suggests it will save life also. Whereas randomized data, which I and Hafisa were just discussing, does not show that unless it's a high score. So we need to apply the GRACE score to everybody and follow our lead from there and do it as early as possible. And that varies from one hospital to the other based on the logistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a very elegant talk, as always. Any questions from the audience, please?
I would want comments rather than questions.
Okay, a comment. I think it's very clear that if we intervene early, we are not doing harm. That's what is important. So we need to continue our present practice. We don't need to change it. That as soon as we get a chance of these NSTEMI patients, we should subject them to angiogram and do intervention as needed. And those who are at high risk, they should be given priority. That's it.
Another comment I'd like to make is that non-STEMI is a very misunderstood concept.
You can call it an acute coronary syndrome, you know.
Call it whatever.
Your topic name was NSTEMI, that's why.
Okay, sure, of course. Non-STEMI is a very big misconception. Why do I say that? Now, if it is a non-STEMI, we expect it to be an intermittent clot. So why does the LV drop? Why does the non-STEMI drop the left ventricular function? You find so many people, they come with a history of chest pain, going for sometime, they come to you, see some T changes, you say this is non-STEMI. They're actually ST elevation MI which have come late and the ECGs have settled down and you label them as ST because there's no elevation and there's T changes. So they're actually evolving ST elevation MIs and they're still going ongoing chest pain. And there was a very wonderful Korean data that you must apply a door to balloon time on non-ST elevation MI. And his data suggested that if you apply a non-STEMI patients with door to balloon time, you'll be saving very significant lives. So we need to, I think, change terminology from, occlusive MIs to non-occlusive, total wall thickness MI, non-thickness MI. But it's beyond the scope of this lecture to talk about it. But
basically, we have known for decades that sometimes ECG changes may take up to 24 hours to come up. So, and many of these arteries in NSTEMIs are totally occluded, and that's why it's there. And I think you're very right. We need to reevaluate our NSTEMIs. How do you do that? I think we'll have to wait and see. But it's very, very significant.
You know how many sensible people have tried to devise a trial for it and they could not complete it?
Yeah, because it's an ECG finding, and ECGs may take a long time or
very
may never
difficult,
change.
very challenging to put these trials together.
We also have now cardiac biomarkers, We have troponins which give a very early indication that the patient is having problem.
Professor Sohail,
we have some scoring system as well, which are very helpful in
I
deciding.
think GRACE score, we must apply the GRACE score, that's very important.
वो बहुत अच्छा है, उससे आपको आइडिया हो जाता है कि आपने इंटरवीन करना है या नहीं करना.
you have defined.
Excuse me, उस दिन आ रहा था कि NICVD के कई centers हैं जो somebody saying वो ECG नहीं करते, वो troponin करते हैं. I think that's very sensible. मतलब अगर pain आई है तो troponin is going to dictate something. So ECG of course acute हमें तो बता देगी.
वो तो बिल्कुल एक अलग चीज है. पेन अगर है तो you have to intervene.
देखिए ECG तो हम करते हैं, उसका तो guideline है कि 10 मिनट के अंदर करनी है. But troponin is the one which has to be done.
Professor Sohail, very nicely presented topic, but I'm still slightly confused.
That makes all of us.
How you clarify and differentiate in a non-ST segment elevation MI patients who are at high risk and who are at low risk, number one. Number two, you said GRACE score of 140. Okay, but will you point out to some other tests which are very simple and a person over there in emergency can at that time immediately differentiate this is a high risk non-ST and this is a low risk or intermediate risk non-ST, like troponins and BNPs and all other. Please, if you have...
Sir, I'm not being funny, लेकिन अगर वो कहते हैं समुद्र को कूजे में जमा कर दिया ना, तो अगर एक समुद्र कूजे में आ सकता है तो उसको रहना ही उधर चाहिए. इट्स नॉट अ ब्लडी समुद्र, यू नो. सो व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज कि देखिए, जब आप गाइडलाइन को छोड़ देते हैं ना, किताब से हटते हैं, तो फिर इट्स एजुकेटेड गैस. आई मीन आई कुड नॉट. और यहाँ पे अपना आपके लॉजिस्टिक सिस्टम बनाना है ना. अब जैसे होता है कि जी आपने हर ट्रायल में, वो अंग्रेज़ों का सिस्टम है, फिर 18 मिनट में अस्पताल से बंदा घर से अस्पताल पहुँच जाता है. यहाँ पे तो 1.5 दिन लग जाता है किसी बंदे को. तो आप जिनको आप स्टेज कर रहे होते हैं, आई मीन कैन यू लीव देम अलोन नोइंग कि वो 1.5 दिन लगा के फिर 20,000 की गाड़ी करा के आएगा. All those things matter. So जो आप पूछ रहे हैं, I wish I knew what the answer was. I don't even understand the question actually, but
So would like to just ask.
नहीं सर, माफ करना. I'm very serious. I mean it's a very wonderful concept that you're saying, but very जी sir.
Sir, just one question, sir. Thank you very much for a wonderful talk, sir. I just wanted to ask that, like you said that the high-risk patient, they should be intervened earlier. So we see many times in hospitals where the primary cath facility is not available. So we have to transfer those patients immediately to the nearest tertiary care setting for those PCIs. But the high-risk patients are those who are having hypotension or they are in failure. So transferring such patients to the nearest cath facility, it's also hazardous, considering the safety of the patient. And then, you know, the staff, they're also, you know, concerned that transferring such serious critical patients to that facility. So what should we do about them? Like, you know, we should transfer them as such, or if we wait, then definitely mortality goes high. But if we transfer them in the same condition, so that transport is also a dilemma. So what's your say on
देखिए,
this?
हमारी एम्बुलेंस पे तो ऊपर एक सायरन लगा होता है, एक ड्राइवर होता है, एक ऑक्सीजन सिलेंडर होता है ना. दैट्स नॉट एन एम्बुलेंस. मतलब लेडी डायना का जब हुआ था तो फ्रेड जो एम्बुलेंस आई थी उसमें 4 O नेगेटिव ब्लड पड़े हुए थे. एंड जब ये ब्लू लाइन एम्बुलेंस चलती है, वो हार्ट शोल्डर पे चलती है. इट्स एज एफिशिएंट एज इंटेंसिव केयर. सो जब हमारे पास वो लॉजिस्टिक्स नहीं है तो फिर इट्स फेयर गेम. लेकिन फौज में तो कहते हैं कि बंदा रास्ते में नहीं मरना चाहिए. लेट हिम डाई वेयर ही इज. डोंट, इफ यू सेंड हिम, ही डाइज, दैट्स इट, यू आर इन ट्रबल. सो लेट हिम डाई इन पीस. आपका जो बंदा है ना, rather than द फैमिली हैज टू बी टेकन इनटू कॉन्फिडेंस. पूरा सिस्टम बनेगा. सो this is where Del Kiani and the administrative things will come.
So one more question, sir, please. So one more question, with your
Sir, we'll
permission, sir.
take
It was
one last
excellent academic talk. My question is this: after just having the SENSTEMI in front of you, you're just going to opt the early invasive strategy for the coronary angiogram, and most of the SENSTEMI usually present with the more than one vessel disease. So what will be your decision, just to go either with your naked eye decision, opting the culprit vessel, or you will just going to opt some other test? And we have to just clarify the answer with our averagely equipped labs in most of our part of our country. Second part of question is this, most of the centers are not been equipped with the low molecular weight heparin. So can we just replace the Dovax with the heparin with these NSTEMIs, because it's a real fact, the unavailability of the things. So please, your kind comments on this.
देखिए, वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन. लेकिन सबसे अच्छा सवाल किसी ने नहीं पूछा अभी तक. सबसे अच्छा सवाल ये है कि जो गाइडलाइन है वो कहती है कि आप कैथ करने से पहले उसको एंटीप्लेटलेट ना दें. बिकॉज वहां पे जिन्होंने गाइडलाइन बनाई है उनकी सर्जिकल टाइम इतनी तकड़ी है कि वो बंदे को कैथ लैब से उठा के थिएटर में ले जाएंगे. हमारा प्राइमरी पीसीआई में हु इज गोना सेंड समबडी टू द कैथ लैब, फ्रॉम कैथ लैब टू द ओटी? नो वन. सो और हमारे इतने ज़्यादा एडहॉक्स होते हैं कि इनको आप गाइडलाइन फॉलो करें, एंटीप्लेटलेट ना दें, देन सी व्हाट हैपेंस. यू गॉट टू गिव. हम तो दे सकते हैं ना. सो देखिए, गाइडलाइन इज मेड बाय द फंड प्रोवाइडर. जिसने पैसे देने हैं, मसलन फरहान साहब का ड्राइवर आ गया, फरहान साहब कहते हैं मेरा पास ताल्लुक कोई नहीं है, लो जी इसको ट्रीट हिम लाइक अ पॉपर. बट वो कहते हैं यार बड़ा खानदानी बंदा है मेरा, इसको कुछ होना नहीं चाहिए, एंड देन थैंक यू फॉर द बिल. लेकिन अब फरहान साहब अगर उसके पैसे सारे दे रहे तो गाइडलाइन चेंज हो रही है. तो गाइडलाइन इज डिक्टेटेड बाय द फंड प्रोवाइडर. सो आई मीन जो अपना लोकल फैसिलिटी है, अगर DHQ फॉर एग्जांपल अगर है, उसमें डिसिप्लिन भी नहीं है, तो अब क्या कर सकते हैं? देखिए, डॉक्टर विल ओनली यूज द डिवाइस ही हैज. सो इट इज द सिस्टम. लाइक आई वाजंट जोकिंग व्हेन आई सेड कि मेडिसिन इज सच अ सीरियस बिजनेस, इट कांट बी लेफ्ट टू द डॉक्टर्स. हम लोग तो एक एंड मोटर न्यूरॉन के एंड पाथवे है ना, जो आएगा वो करेंगे. वी विल बी ब्लेम्ड फॉर एवरीथिंग कि हम तो आप, लेकिन प्लीज आप कीप योर हायर अप्स इन पिक्चर. इफ समथिंग गोज रॉन्ग देयर से आप बताते, हम तो इसको अमेरिका भेज देते. आए दिन होता है कि छापा मारा, उसने उसका भी फ्री करा दिया, उसका फ्री कर दिया. व्हाट अबाउट द अदर 80 पीपल लाइंग इन द वार्ड, उनका फ्री कौन करेगा? सो ये वी आर मेड स्केपगोट्स. सो प्लीज लुक आफ्टर योरसेल्फ बेस्ड ऑन ए सिस्टम. या आप किसी बड़े बंदे से जियारी लगा के रखें, जैसे सर बैठे हैं वहां पे, जया नजर क्या नहीं, ठीक है. मैंने तो इनके साथ जियारी लगा के रखी है. नोबडी कम्स क्लोज टू मी. Yeah, and I get elected in elections also.